Welcome back to Usapang Bayan. Kasama pa rin po natin sina Mr. Simoun Ung at Mr. Stephen Cutler ng Omnipay. Sir, before we took a break, you mentioned about one of the challenges being faced by the type of business that you have is the lack of the national ID. Are there any efforts coming from your end to discuss this with our national government?
Yes, in fact, the central bank, the BSP itself, has been working very closely with the legislature, both Congress and Senate, to pass a national ID law. We know there's been very many versions over the past decade or so in terms of putting together a national ID. We understand there's a lot of resistance, maybe part of our vestiges of the Spanish colonial mentality, I suppose, with the tearing up of the cedula. That's why there may be some, from a gut level or instinctual level, a lot of people are opposing the national ID. But the national ID doesn't only serve to facilitate payment transactions, it's actually a national security concern as well. If you don't know whether it's a Malaysian or Indonesian or Filipino terrorist to begin with, how do you begin tracking them and do a better job of protecting our borders? So, I mean, it's a very basic requirement.
I have a question for Mr. Steve. Sir, let's talk about financial issues. Every single Filipino is currently facing, in the Philippines, according to the Philippine News Agency, the average income of a Filipino household stands at 22,500 pesos, and most households were unable to maximize that income. You mentioned before we start the program about financial management. What can Filipinos do to manage our expenses wisely?
Well, I think one of the things that the card programs that we're engaged with for example, Simon mentioned the city of Bacoor, the city of Manila. There are a couple of other groups that are using the prepaid cards for cash disbursements in a conditional cash transfer type situation. Human beings, being human beings, will spend cash if it sits in their pocket. It's just too easy to buy what we'll call knickknacks, little stuff that you don't really need, but it's just something you want as you're walking through the store. And you've got cash in your pocket, so you buy it. And then at the end of the month, you know, now you don't have enough money to buy food and so on. What we're suggesting is that the use of a prepaid card actually kind of takes the money out of the pocket. It's still with you, but it's out of the pocket to where you feel that burning sensation and you want to get rid of it. So it allows you to develop some discipline for yourself because it takes some thought to actually use the card, to go through the card process and so on. So we're suggesting that by adding some breath, some breathing space to a transaction, we will encourage people to think twice about buying stuff that they don't need. Having the extra money then that you've saved allows you now to have some management. By also bringing you into the bigger system where by having a card that carries a major international logo, whether it's UnionPay or JCB or something along those lines, you feel like you're part of the system now. Cash, it's very easy to feel like, you know, you've got the rest of the world, everybody has cards, I don't, so I'm not really part of it. This way, you actually feel like you're part of it and you want to act more responsibly because you have the tools that you need to do that.
Well, one of the things that this administration is particularly concerned about is financial inclusion.
Yeah.
And understandably so, the common statistics that show only 30% of Filipinos are banked, meaning say that they would have a bank account or even an ATM card. No? And in the case of Omnipay, you certainly do have a big chunk of 11.5 million card holders. And surest way that you can see if your card is run in an Omnipay system is just flip the back and you can see Omnipay. Do you have a sample of that with you, Simon?
Yeah.
Maybe we can show that to them. And while you're pulling that out, Maybe you can run off some of the more popular cards that they might not realize is being run on Omnipay.
Well, this one is with Philippine Airlines. This is the Mabuhay Miles travel card. So on the face of it, all this branding is, of course, Philippine Airlines. What people don't realize then is the Omnipay is just a small logo on the back along with BankNet. We're also members of the local ATM network. And what this card does is actually gives you 11 different wallets on a single card. So you have US dollars, Canadian dollars, Australian dollars, Singapore dollars, Hong Kong dollars, Japanese yen, Chinese renminbi, euro, British pound, Philippine peso. Then we have an 11th wallet for the Mabuhay Miles. It's for a new feature that we haven't launched yet with the airline, but at their Philippine Airline partner establishments, let's say Marco Polo Hotels in Cebu, you can take this card, swipe, and pay with miles directly. So you don't have this cumbersome process of having to go onto their website, downloading a paper form, filling it out, faxing it in, waiting for them to process and approve.
Just to clarify on that feature of having money inside the card like a wallet, you need to first make a deposit, right? You need to feed the card first.
That's right.
Before you can withdraw. Similar to, let's say, any prepaid card, you need to put some money in it. And what you're saying is that even if, let's say, you only put in US dollars, it can be converted into other currencies.
That's right. One of the hidden costs associated with traditional credit card payments, especially when you travel abroad, is the foreign exchange. And a lot of times we don't always know what foreign exchange that our issuing bank will charge, how much premium they'll tack on. What we tried to do is come out with a program that will save people money. And so we worked with Philippine Airlines on this program and said, if they are buying a ticket to Osaka, you know they're going to need Japanese yen. Philippine Airlines can now, as part of their added service to their passengers, offer Japanese yen. You can then load Japanese yen onto this card at your convenience. If you feel the yen is cheap, you can buy prior to your trip and then load yen. And then when you're in Osaka, you use the card and pay like you would use your credit card, except now it's all in yen and you don't have any foreign exchange.
Aside from
costs.
the Philippine Airlines Mabuhay card, can you run off a few other popular names that that Omnipay is co-branded with?
Yeah, we've co-branded with iRemit and LBC from a remittance perspective. We are the co-brand partners of Land Bank of the Philippines. Especially of note there is our program with them for the conditional cash transfer of the DSWD. The ones that the Land Bank is issuing prepaid cards for the conditional cash transfer beneficiaries is actually running on an Omnipay platform.
Well, maybe this is more for Steve. Having that many cards issued, obviously there's more possibility of cards being hacked or even corrupted and things like that. What are we, without giving confidential information, what makes us, let's say, more secure? Is it something that we put into our device, or is it something within our system that enables us to be able to encrypt all of the data so that not anybody can just hack it?
Well, actually, there's a couple of points that I want to bring up about the security of a prepaid card, such as what we're offering. In a user's perspective, one of the things that it does, it makes me more secure, makes the user more secure. If I lose the card, unlike losing my wallet that's full of cash, the card is replaceable. If I lose 5,000 pesos in my wallet, I've lost 5,000 pesos. If I lose 5,000 pesos loaded on the card's gone. Theoretically, nobody else can use it because I have a PIN and so on. And Omnipay can just reissue me the card, put the 5,000 pesos onto a new card. I haven't lost anything. It also makes it much more difficult for somebody to copy the cards. But when you're asking about what kinds of security features, remember Simon was talking about some of the out-of-band authentication or the two-factor authentication. We believe that that's not a perfect system, but it reduces our risk greatly because the opportunity to corrupt both our phone and the card at the same time is Well, we've assessed it to be a very, very low risk. So it's very difficult for people to do that. That makes it a much more secure system than if I just try to use the card or pay cash. From another perspective, if I can see this for just a minute, just like a regular card, when I'm using this at a hotel or something, we have the signatures on the back, so it still has to run through a system with the EMV chips, which are coming online in the next year or so, which will make sure that we meet internationally accepted standards for card security.
So you're talking about chips with cards embedded in them.
Or the cards with chips embedded in them.
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
Sir, in a third world country such as the Philippines, the most popular payment option is through cash.
Right.
Can you discuss how Omnipay's services ease the process of payment transactions? Because there are some instances wherein you go to a convenience store and you use the card and their system, the system of the convenience store, does not work.
That's something that we're working towards together as an entire industry. I think part of our challenge is getting away from that cash mentality. A lot of people, businesses and government included, don't account for the cost of cash. And what I mean is when you handle cash, you have risk of theft, loss, pilferage, fraud, corruption, all these other costs associated with cash that if we were electronic would all go away. And that's one of the reasons I think the central bank is also pushing for the electronification of retail payments. The central bank has set a target of 20% of retail payments being electronic by 2020. That's a big stretch goal. Just to give you some context, today in the Philippines, retail payment transactions, only 1% is electronic. That's why we don't mind working with other banks and working with other players in our industry, because together as an entire industry we account for 1% of all retail payment transactions. There's no point fighting each other. Our competition really is cash. It's not the other players in the financial industry.
Well, please stay tuned. Magbabalik pa rin po ang Usapang Bayan. Kasama pa rin po ang executives ng Omnipay, Mr. Simoun Ung at Mr. Stephen Cutler.